All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Again, thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time in being here for the Infrascale Product Deep Dive. So today we have our channel chief, Chris Sturbins. We have our senior sales engineers, Seth Clement and Aaron Jordan. And we are going to be talking about the Infrascale product. If you have any questions as we go through, then please use the question tool to type those in. We are going to be recording this, so we will be able to share that recording with you, and we will be posting it in the Infrascale Partner Resource Center, the PRC. We'd also love to hear from you. So here you see Chris, Seth, and Aaron have their email addresses here. So we'd love to hear from you. If any questions or comments come up, even after the presentation, then please go ahead and reach out to us. And then with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Chris. So Chris, take it away.
Thank you, Carla, and hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. We're going to spend some time digging into the products and follow up to the webinar that we did last week about the new partner programs. Before we dive into the actual demos, we're going to do just a really brief overview of the product set, and then at that point we'll go to Seth for disaster recovery. Aaron will cover the cloud backup demo, and then we have time at the end for some Q&A. So if you have any questions, again, please type them in over the course of the session, and we will tackle as many as we have time for at the end. So here at Infrascale, our mission is to eradicate downtime and data loss for all of our customers and for all of our partners. And what you're going to see today will show you how we actually make that happen. We've got a very large presence around the world here with over 50,000 customers protected. We have over 900 partners that we work with. These are IT service providers, managed service providers, and value-added resellers that are currently selling and managing the solution to protect our customers. And there's over 1 million devices now being protected around the world. Product really covers 3 different use cases for protection of customers, and these are the things we're going to cover today. So disaster recovery, push-button failover solution that you'll see, and the cloud backup and recovery also does provide some ransomware protection for endpoints, and you'll see both of those things in Aaron's session. Here again are the 2 products and kind of how they break down. Just really briefly, the disaster recovery solution is an on-premise appliance that handles local backup and local failover. It offsites the data to a data center where it can then be also cloud booted. The cloud backup solution is a direct-to-cloud offering, and this takes the data directly from devices and servers and sends that data directly to the cloud without the intermediate appliance. And you'll see how those 2 things can be used together to cover pretty much any environment. All devices are protectable by these 2 offerings, so not just the traditional servers, both physical and virtual, but also desktops and laptops, and we also pick up mobile devices like smartphones and tablets. So there's no part of the network environment that is exposed. And when we talk about mixed environments, we can handle operating systems from all walks of the world. You know, Windows, Unix, Linux, with the virtual, the VMware, the Hyper-V. And again, we also pick up things like iOS and Droid for those mobile devices. And one of the last pieces to share with you is that we have the ability to direct this data not just to our own data center, but to just about any cloud. So we have partners that have stood up their own private cloud in a data center and can send all their customers' data there. You can also take advantage of public clouds like Amazon and Azure. So any one of those different flavors are available to you. And with that, I'd like to hand this off now to Seth, who's going to be going through a deep dive on the disaster recovery solution. There's a brief architecture diagram here, and then he'll go right into his dashboard.
Perfect. Thanks, Chris. So this is detailing the architecture of how this flows. So whether we have a hybrid approach with an appliance to a cloud or direct to cloud from those endpoints. So it just kind of gives you a visual. All this is controllable through a central web dashboard whether you're dialing into the appliance remotely or managing that direct-to-cloud solution. So if you want to kick me over the presenter role, I'll kind of dive into the DR side of things. So diving right in, you guys should all have my screen. Diving right in, this is where you're going to land when you first see the appliance. When you first log in, you're going to see this collection of widgets. It's completely editable to what you want to see, whether it be what you're using, how much network throughput you're getting, how much protected data per client, etc. Now, the only thing that's not editable is going to be if there's an update or if there's a connection open to our support tunnel for whatever reason. That would actually notify you in the upper left. So anything that's very important for you to know is always going to show on the first thing up front. Now, for this demo, I'm actually going to go through the procedure of failing over to the cloud. I'll talk about how we get the data from the server, we pull it to the cloud, booting up in the cloud, and then actually failing it back because we need to get it back to your infrastructure. It's not really that valid. So I'll start with that, and I'm going to use VMware for this case, but I'll talk about Hyper-V as well. So for physical clients, we cover, as Chris mentioned, the standard Windows, Linux, Mac. Most notably, here's the physical Windows machines. We do have the ability to capture that physical box and spin that up on the appliance and or in the cloud. So even if it's a domain controller that's still on hardware, we can still capture that and run it the same way. And then we get into the more esoteric operating systems such as AIX, Novell, and Solaris on Spark. So really, whatever you run into, we have that covered. On VMware, we're completely agentless. We're using the vStorage API to capture all that data. Now, we do use change block tracking and ignoring unallocated sectors so that we're not capturing an additional data that's just not necessary to get. One thing to note is that we do have synthetic fulls, which means that each individual restore point is a full restore point. The full is rolled into each incremental and differential so that, again, each individual restore point is a full restore point. Now, the main differences between Hyper-V and VMware, I'll pull that up real quick. Hyper-V is generally sitting on a physical box that's running Windows server version, and it's going to be generally more than just a Hyper-V host. As such, you're going to want to capture that file server data or domain controller in and of itself because the VMs are easily restorable, but you still have to rebuild that host. So we do plant an agent on the host to capture that data as well with that DR imaging, and then capture the VMs agentless through that agent. Now, replication, I'm just going to talk about that really quickly before I get into the actual failover. Now, once we've captured the data, the replication is, there's really 3 ways to replicate, right? There's raw data going over the wire. There's byte level delta, which creates a patch and then sends that patch over and then rebuilds that job. And then there's a proprietary system that we've built, which is we call it DDFSAR. It's dedupe assistive replication. And just what that means is that we're comparing the blocks that exist for a job, sending that over to the secondary, and comparing that to all the blocks that exist. And if it's already there, we're not going to send it at all. So it comes back to the primary and says, hey, I have 90% of these blocks. Don't bother sending them. Just get me whatever I'm missing. So we transmit only the pieces that are missing. And as you can see here, my physical throughput is 93 megabit here at the office, but I'm getting an effective throughput of 143 gigabit. Now that's inflated a little bit because the last job that sent was a duplicate, so it just skipped everything. But there's significant acceleration in that nonetheless. So obviously we can boot on the appliance locally and or in the cloud. So I'm actually going to do this in the cloud, and I'm going to assume that the replication is already done. We're actually going to boot it up in the cloud and then pull it back. So any of these machines will work. I'm just going to pick this Ubuntu VM. It's about 32 gigs. We'll just pick the last restore point. We'll give it some realistic resources. And I'll copy the password because I'm going to need that shortly. Now, we shoot for under 15 minutes, but as you can see, this is going to be significantly faster than that. Generally speaking, this is within minutes, simply because we're cloning the backup itself, so we're not affecting the backup, but it's all deduplicated. Now, all the changes that are run while it's in the cloud are not going to be deduplicated, so it's going to actually take up space on the system. But let me actually dial into that and show you that it's up and running. Should be that one. And there it is, up and running. So great. What do we do with it from there? We've run it for a few days, and now we need to actually get that back into our environment because our infrastructure is back. The motherboard was replaced, the power supply is replaced. Generally you don't have those parts on hand, but in the meantime, you've got those parts. Now you're back up to getting it running. Great. So we'll actually shut that down. I'm actually going to pull the plug in this case just for the sake of time. So we'll shut that machine down. We'll create a backup of that job, which will capture all those changes, deduplicate them, and run them back into an actual job. So there it's done already. Once we have that job created, we'll push that back to the primary, which is going to use that DDFSAR technology both ways. So you'll see that it sends that mapped file first, and then shortly thereafter, it's going to send the actual data. Now, all that data is going to match, so it's going to be incredibly fast. So once that's done, you can see it's dropping from 3 hours to a few seconds. And so that should be already done. And then we'll have it back here as a new job on the primary. Now, it does take a couple seconds for that to finish transferring, so it shows up a little early. Once that's done, it'll actually show up as a valid job. From there, we have the ability to do the full restore. Now, in this case, I'm just going to choose another VM while we wait. But in this case, we have the full restore capabilities to push it back to any host, any resource pool, or any data store. In fact, as you can see here in a minute, we'll actually be able to choose the data store by disk. So if you have an SSD running the OS and main storage on an array, we can plant it back the same way so you're not clamoring for storage. And we'll give it a couple seconds here. Now, in addition to that, while we're waiting for this wizard to capture that, in addition to that, we have the ability to break that VMDK open. So if you have files and folders on that VMDK, and you don't need to restore the whole VM, you're just looking for a file and folder, we can actually break that open as well. Now in this case, we're going to, I'm just going to show you creating the new virtual machine as I was talking about, but we do have the ability to overwrite the existing virtual machine. So just planting it back the same way. Again, any destination, any data store, any resource pool we're connected to, and again, choosing the data store by disk. Now, you can name it, and then you have the option to leave it disconnected or power it off during a maintenance window for a full restore and failover back. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we can browse and restore that job, which will again mount that image on the appliance, and we'll be able to break that open and pull out files and folders, restoring them to any client at any path. In addition to that, we have application data. So if this machine, for example, this is a Windows 2008 machine, I believe it has SQL on it, we have the ability to quiesce the SQL and our Exchange databases and rip those out of that backup and restore those independently with that application data restore. Now, component files, we can absolutely pull out the VMDK itself. So if you wanted to mount that disk somewhere else, we can do that as well. In this case, we're just going to restore selected files only. And it'll give me the option to actually pull those files, download them directly, and or restore those files and folders to wherever you like. Now, the one thing we can do with physical machines that we cannot do with VMs or DR images, because the VMs and DR images are coming in as a big blob of data, we're not breaking that open, deduplicating the files, and then putting it back into a VMDK. Anything like that is just extensive work. So the one thing we can do with physical machines that we cannot do with virtual machines is we can actually search that backup. So because we're indexing all the files and deduplicating it on a file level first, pagefile.sys, which I know exists, we'll search for that and it'll list out every one that's in that index. So you can find out when that was changed or what size it was at the time. You can find the path and you can actually download that directly. Now, this solution is deployable virtually or physically. On a virtual deployment, there's obviously the options for Hyper-V and or VMware. Hyper-V is a little bit behind the game just because Microsoft it's a Microsoft limitation. They came out with 2016 just a few days ago, a couple weeks, I guess. So with 2016, the ability to do nested virtualization is only available for Windows machines. and we're right on the heels of that and getting that released. VMware, on the other hand, we can do nested virtualization for any machine that we can boot on the appliance. So all your Linux, all the VMs, Unix, Windows, etc. Now this is schedule-based, so we do have a default schedule set that we feel is going to cover most people. However, obviously you're not going to cover everyone. So the ability to create whatever schedule you'd like with however many runs you'd like. Now really we can get it down to the minute. The only caveat to that is that you need to allow enough time for that to finish before we continue and run another backup. We do have shared file sets, so if you're deploying across many, many workstations, we have the C root and sys user depending on the OS. But again, you can define this for if I wanted to capture workstations, for example, that have both C and D, but I want to exclude MP3s because, let's be honest, they're workstations. We can absolutely do that. In addition to the exclusion and inclusion rules, we could break that down however you'd like. Basically regular expression to say if I wanted to capture anything with an A in the name or starts with an A in the name and exclude everything else, we can do that. But this way it's deployable across all your clients. Now a few things I didn't touch on during the initial part, we'll kind of get into that now. We do have the ability to pull in Exchange mailbox level backups through 2013, soon to be 2016, Exchange database level backups, and SQL Server database backups all the way through. So we have the plugin available to truncate the logs and capture all that data independently in a separate job, even if you're doing a DR image of that machine, so that you can restore that independently if you lose just your database. So I wanted to get into deduplication a little bit more. It happens twofold. So you have file level backups and block level dedupe. So on a physical machine, we would pull in the data, deduplicate it across the files. Now it doesn't matter where those files came from, whether it be Linux, Windows, Mac. It doesn't really matter. As long as the hash of the file is the same, we're going to deduplicate it across. Then we're going to ship all that data into the block dedupe file system. Now, where that matters is the VMs, DR images, and Hyper-V, VMware and Hyper-V, all dedupe in line directly to the block dedupe file system. So again, it's all block level dedupe. Once that happens, it leads into that replication I talked about earlier, where we compare those blocks that exist for that job. Some of the things I didn't talk about on replication, we do have completely separate retention policies for primary and secondary. So if you wanted to maintain 50 terabytes in the cloud and just archive it there, or and then have 6 months or 10 terabytes on the appliance, we can do that, or vice versa. It's also selectable per client, so you don't have to replicate everything, and you can set a priority to that replication. So if you had a financial database or something very important to get off to the cloud first, we can do that. I'll touch on archiving very briefly, and then I'll kind of swing it over to Aaron here. Now, archiving is it runs in parallel with, but independent of replication. So it's a third target for your data. Obviously, these disks are encrypted or encryptable simply because you might be taking them off-site. Now, this is going to list out all the media inventory. In this case, I only have it listed as the server room because that's where it sits. I rarely go in there. However, it would list out any disk that you use for archiving here. You can definitely label those disks so you can find them again, and where the location is to where you can locate that disk. The idea is that you can do a legal hold, for example. All that data is streaming to the cloud, but it automatically expires. So in this case, you can say, okay, I have a legal hold for this data. You can run that job off to a archive disk, and it sits there indefinitely. Now, from that archive disk, we can surely drill into that archive disk, find the archive set that was listed, find the clients that were drilled off to that archive set, and even browse that disk if it's inserted. Now, again, you can restore any of these files and folders back to any client at any path, but in the case of a VM or DR image, you need the full restore capabilities, you can import that job back to the appliance, break that open, and or restore it as necessary. Now, archiving is also selected per client, so again, you don't have to archive everything. You can do it manually or automatically. And I mentioned earlier, last thing on that, I mentioned earlier that we do synthetic fulls for VMs, which basically equates to a full every time a job is streamed off to that archive disk. However, we do have the ability to break that down. We just call it dehydrating the archive disk, which breaks that back down and archives it as an incremental and differential. You do require the chain at that point. However, it saves a significant amount of data capacity on that disk. So last thing to talk about here, I mentioned earlier that all of this is available from the dashboard, which Aaron will go over here shortly. These are the machines that I actually have listed. This is actually the partner demo, is the one that I've been demoing on currently. I can absolutely drill in from that dashboard because IT people never really have a vacation. I can absolutely drill into that appliance and get to that dashboard or that management console directly from that dashboard with a secure connection to the appliance. Now, obviously that's off by default. You choose to turn it on. Once it's turned on, you can absolutely drill back and save the day because somebody's freaking out for a restore. So with that, I will turn it over to Aaron to quickly go through the dashboard. And if you have any questions, by all means, throw them into the question section, and we'll get to those shortly.
Thank you for that, Seth. So as Seth transitioned this over, I'm going to spend my time kind of delving more into the dashboard that you're going to be using the majority of the time, or not, depending on your RMMs, and we'll cover a lot of this in a moment. But I did want to just take the moment to kind of pull out a little bit to kind of give you a high-level overview of the product and how this part is going to fit in a world of DR. So first and foremost, I need to, just let me know if you could see my screen to make sure the transition happened perfectly. And with that being said, we have this dashboard Seth alluded to, and this is going to be your master dashboard. This is where you as MSPs will go and control everything all at once. So whether you are backing up mom and pops, and thank you for the confirmation, guys, whether you're backing up mom and pops with just file folder data because maybe they can't afford a DR solution, or maybe you are using this to integrate the DR solution alongside the direct-to-cloud so that you can pick up mobile devices while you're getting your entire site backed up and prepared for disaster scenarios so that you can boot them in the cloud. Or maybe they just simply want a backup solution just for files and folders. Maybe that's all they need. So in all cases, whether you do have those DR scenarios or you do have just file folder or some combination thereof, you have this Infrascale dashboard, and this dashboard is going to be your main place to go. Now, I did briefly mention the or not. That could be, let's say that you have, for example, ConnectWise. So we have integration with ConnectWise. We also have a lot of other ways to report to your RMMs or PSAs that aren't, at this time, directly connected to our dashboard, but can still receive reports and still prevent you from even having to touch this dashboard in general. In fact, I want to spend some time on that as we go through this. So first and foremost on this part, this is just a lot of quick activity information, how things are doing. So your companies, how you're allocating the storage, how much they're using, the accounts, and how much individual accounts are using, the activity, the good, the bad, the ugly, the total storage usage, even platform breakdown, if you're into that kind of thing. So we have all that there. The majority of your action, however, is going to be done right here in this tool section. This tool section is going to give you everything from the agents to install, which I should mention this direct-to-cloud is an agent-based solution. You will install an agent on either your Android device, iOS device, Windows laptop, or MacBook, or whatever Windows server you might have, or even the Mac server. You can support that with this as well. And this will do everything from file and folder backup all the way into native SQL backup for Excel, or excuse me, SQL 2008 and up, on top of Exchange backup for 2010 and up. And this will not only do local backups of those Exchange and SQL boxes, but also push those off to the cloud in both a timely manner and using retention policies as per what your needs are. On top of all of that, our direct-to-cloud does offer bare metal licensing should you need that, and that will enable you to do sector-level backups of your servers or even desktops and workstations if you want to go that far. And then once you have those bare metal images, you can use those to again, resurrect, if not as quickly as our appliance, your desktops and your servers from a bare metal image. And that's everything from virtualizing the machines to just hardware-independent recoveries on brand new hardware. Like if you started off with, for example, a PowerEdge server and you went to an HP ProLiant, it would be able to make that transition. Enough of that, though. Let's actually talk about the good stuff. So first and foremost, I do want to mention on this part is the rebranding. So our direct-to-cloud, the Infrascale Cloud Backup, is going to be rebrandable. So you can change the product name, you can change the logo that appears on the desktop, you can change the desktop icon rather, you can change the logo that appears in the upper left of the software, you can set the banner that appears across the top of the software, and then perhaps usually missed by a lot of our competitors, but most importantly, you can change the report sender address. So anytime an email comes, it's going to say it comes from whomever you set there, not from Infrascale, and then that blows your whole disguise. To that end, we also provide for rebranding of your dashboard. So you can set whatever you want here across the top. I can simply apply it. And then I'll scroll to the top, and once this refreshes, you'll see the new colors and new logo that I've set here. Now you're probably thinking, the quick people that saw the URL, but what if I see the URL infrascale.com? How do I prevent my end users from seeing that? So we actually have the dashboard.managedoffsitebackup.net URL, wherein your end users, your companies, and even you can log in and note the unbranding, the lack of branding here. When you log in, it takes the branding of whatever your master administrator is set to. So this prevents any kind of allusion to Infrascale unless, of course, you desire to expose this to your clients, which you're more than welcome to. And I'll take a second to mention that our support for both the appliance and the direct-to-cloud is 24/7, stateside support. You've got phone support, email support, live chat, ticketing system. In all of these cases, you can contact us and we will be able to directly assist them or assist them through you. It's really your choice as a reseller. We also have other lines of support, not just for tech support, but what if you want to get off and hit the ground running? What if you want to make sure that you've got emails to go out the blast? What if you want to make sure that you have marketing materials and presentations, even to the point where Infrascale will take the time and do co-marketing with you? We have dollars set aside where you can say, I would like to do this event at this location, and I want to bring people in, and I want Infrascale to have a representative there and then do a live demo or do a live question and answer. We actually have the capabilities and are more than happy to do that with our partners because it is a partnership, not just a client that we're selling to and hoping that they do well, right? We want to, our success depends on your success, and so we want to be there for you every step of the way. So now let's actually jump into the solution and the services. So with our direct-to-cloud, and again, it's agent-based, you can use policies to direct what is going to be backed up, how often it's going to be backed up, and specifically the parameters of the backup. Notice here that I've got tons of policies. You may make as many as your heart desires. You can then define ignoring files of a specific size, backing up files after a specific date or purging them after a specific date, scanning specific locations, looking for specific file types. You could even set custom file types if, for example, you have a CAD file or a medical office, they have special type of data that you need to pick up that's not standardized in the direct-to-cloud backup, just simply noted here. You can tell it to run as a service so that it's running even if people aren't around, which is really important. And then, of course, you can choose a permission set to make sure that it picks up those locked files, and which we do, I should mention, support locked files. So if somebody's working on like an Excel file and their software runs on their machine, it can pick those up even if they go home for the day and the file's still open. It'll be able to snapshot that file. You can set how often to run the backup, and probably my favorite part of this policies are to be able to specifically include and exclude files and folders. So if you have a specific folder that you know will exist on somebody's C drive that you need to pick up that may not be in the norm or the usual backup, you can create a policy for them, specifically set a specific set of folders to look for and call it a day. So now once I have this policy created, I can do a lot with it. I can apply it to a backup account after the fact, which we'll touch on in a moment. I can also take this and bake it into an installer. So let's say that they do have a larger site and they're not looking for DR, maybe they are looking for DR, but they still have an endpoint management solution that they need to pick up, like maybe a bunch of laptops, for example. And you want to be able to deploy this to all 50 people. but you don't have all day. You've got 6 other clients you have to see, and a real disaster occurred over at your biggest client, and you just have to spend the time on them, but you still need to get this job done. So what you can do is you can create an MSI. You can bake in a policy which will predefine what I'm going to back up. You can tell that MSI that while you're at it, you're going to create these backup accounts for me, and you're going to use this template to do that. And then you're going to set the size of the account. And then from there, you can take this MSI and either push it via your RMM, or you can apply it to the group policy object on an Active Directory controller. And then when you set the permissions, the people with the proper permissions will log in. The software will auto-install, auto-configure the backup, auto-create the account, auto-phone home, and let it know it's done and ready to go, and auto-run the backup. It does everything for you. And this is going to be a real big time saver for those people, again, who have laptops or a lot of devices that you need to use this endpoint protection on, but you just don't have time to deploy. So now the next logical step is, okay, I've got this installed. How do I manage this? There's a lot to manage. So there's a couple routes you can go. You can use the backup monitoring to keep an eye on stuff, which we'll touch on in a moment. And or you can go to this protected devices, and you can do what we like to call mass management. So I can see a list of all my machines. This is irrespective of the account that they belong to, or the machine that they belong to, or the company they belong to, which of course you can filter if you need that. So you want to just focus on specific aspects. And then all these machines with the little green dot means that the service is running, it's online, and it's ready to receive commands. And I can grab multiple at once and do a mass action, so I can cancel all the backup jobs, run all the backup jobs, upgrade all the agents on those clients' machines, or I can do some one-on-one actions. So if I go over to this one, I can click Manage, and as soon as my browser comes to life, I can cancel the job independently. I can configure independent jobs as well. I can deactivate the device so I can prevent it from doing more backup. I can download the logs for troubleshooting, and this is awesome because if you do find there's something's wrong and you're like, okay, now I got to go to the client site and they're 30 miles away and I just didn't want to do this today. Nope, no need. Download the logs. It'll pull the server logs as to the connectivity, if the packets are being sniffed, if they're being stripped, if they're being monitored, along with, is it Infrascale's in? Is their data center, having, some kind of situation going on where they have to log in? Or if you need to keep track of individual files. So you'll get an Excel file that says a list of every single file, its exact location, and its exact status, whether it's, backed up or canceled or failed or whatever. It'll keep track of that. You can push an install of the bare metal solution, and noting if you push the install here, you can actually monitor and manage your bare metal solution from here, so you don't have to sit there on site and configure everything. You can run the backup on the fly. You can upgrade the software on the fly. And probably the scariest, but probably the most life-saving feature is this wipe device. Scenario for this is you have a laptop. Your client is at a Starbucks. He's got some sensitive government data on there, and he walks up to use the restroom because he's had too much coffee. And somebody says, ooh, free laptop. And they walk away with it. It's unlocked. The data is there for the stealing. So what do? You can use this wipe data to wipe the data that's selected for backup, and generally that's going to call it a day for that because all your data is secure in the cloud, and the stuff that's actually important to you will be cleaned up, right? But what if they come back and say, hey, I've got a personal tax documentation, some images and tax documentation directly in a special folder on the C drive that wasn't being backed up. Can you do something for me? To that end, you can hit wipe device, and this will start with files and folders that are common and work their way to the system files and folders, culminating in a blue screen. So this will prevent you from having to worry about losing anything. And then to that end, you can then start tracking the machine. If I clicked on this, or if I go, there's another route where I can zoom in on the machine, I can find out exactly where it's at in the world. So using the IP address, we can track it, and then now I know where to send the police to pick up that device. All right. So from there, you're probably thinking, all right, so what about the basic management? How do I make sure my accounts are under the right size? And how do I apply policies? You keep talking about that. Prove that to me. So if I go here, I can type in a username. I can filter by it, and I can actually go to the OLB partner demo. I can see its stats, how it's doing. Notice how I've got a lot of devices, and this is a good time to mention, unlike some of our competitors, you can buy storage and do whatever you want with it. So if you buy a terabyte, you can make a company and segregate 100 megs out of that, 100 gigs out of that, maybe even 100 megs if you wanted to. Or this other company has, half of that, 500 gigs of that, and you broke it up into those two pieces. And then on top of that, you only want to make one account. And that one account is going to go on 50 devices. No problem. Or maybe you want an account for each person. No problem. Or maybe you want the same device to have 3 accounts. No problem. So you can do whatever you want with this. It's incredibly flexible, and we're not going to, beat you over the head if you go over limits on a site or superimpose, like, you can only back up these specific file types. Everything is fair game. Whatever you want, you can pick up. If I click on actions, you'll note that I can manage policies. We talked about this earlier, but this is how I can click on this and say, okay, this account is going to have this policy for these machines, or this policy for all machines, or whatever you want to do. Which leads me to say that you can have multiple policies per account. Move accounts to company. So this is if you need to move accounts around. Generally speaking, this is for people that have a company size and they have multiple larger subsections within it, and they can move accounts between the subsections. Change account size, of course, upgrade and downgrade of the account size. Change account email for password reset. Suspend the account gives the illusion of a no longer used account, but it prevents it from deleting the data, so you still have access to it if you need it. Cancel the account takes a step further and actually purge the data within 24 hours. If you need it to be faster, you can submit a support ticket. Clean up account is probably one of my favorite management options. Let's say that somebody has fair game on their backups and they backed up whatever they wanted. And then the client comes up and says, I didn't agree to pay for 2 terabytes of data because all of a sudden somebody's backing up their MP3 collection or their movie collection, right? So you're going to say, okay, I need to track this down. So you can pull out a report that shows the largest users, which I'll show you in a moment. And then you can say, okay, this user is obviously, overusing their amount. And so now I need to find that machine, and you can track it down. And then you can say, now I need it to specifically remove these file types. So these, music or image folders, files, or whatever, right? So I'll choose a machine, and then I'll say, specifically look for music files, and then delete. And what this will do is it will go back and do the cleaning for you. You don't need to be involved. You can just say, go do this, and it'll do it for you. So you can also log in as backup account, so you can jump in to see what users are seeing. You can limit users' rights, which is very convenient if you get a call from your client, your company, or the company that's paying you for the service, and say, we're about to terminate Roger. So we need to make sure that he doesn't delete the data off of the cloud because he's pretty angry. So you can just limit the user's rights, and it'll prevent them from being able to remove data from the cloud. You can also use this for those mom and pop stores that just don't know about that fandangled backup that everyone's talking about. So you can specifically prevent them from deleting data from the cloud, saving a lot of time. Set password allows you to set the password on the fly. So you can just circumvent the password reset email, use the administrator can say this is what it is. And of course, you can make the company administrator any account you want. So after the fact, you can change the target owner of that account. So I want to take a second to show you the monitoring real quick, and then we can actually move on to the Q&A section. And of course, the anomaly detection, which I'll talk about, which is probably why most of you are here. So you have the ability to see this list of your machines, see little indicators, what you should be aware of, and then of course see the status and any number of other data. So if I click on this magnifying glass, it'll give me more details. So this one, for example, completed, but it was warning me about something. And this is telling me nothing has run the last 3 days and no files were processed. So this will let me know I got 2 issues. Number 1, it hasn't run in a while. And number 2, nothing's selected for backup. It was scheduled, but somebody gave me a blank or altered the backup set to be blank. And of course, I can go on, but everything from this account is over quota to everything went well, to even give you a list of all the errors that you should be aware of. Like all of these individual files were not backed up because it was over quota. So now you can give a report back to your end user saying, hey, do you want to pay more? Or if you want to back these files up, you need to pay more because you're out of storage. Or we can discuss how to increase or clean up. Now down over to the monitoring settings, this allows you to define the parameters by which you're monitoring. So we have the ability to see daily truncated emails. This is probably what most of you are going to be using. This is going to let you see a list of all the accounts, color-coded, red, yellow, green, the good, the bad, the ugly. And so this way you know which ones to quickly take action items on. You can also, with your RMM, have this email shoot out to you and create tickets based off of specific issues, like they're almost over quota. They've got these errors. They've got, they haven't run in a certain amount of days or whatever. So all that's kept track here. You can even override the default settings. So for example, if it hasn't run in under a day and that's enough for you to be warned about, and then maybe 3 days is the major error, you can adjust that. We also have this account daily email, which is important. For example, people that have like auto tasks that like the bill based off of Excel files that they can report on. And earlier I talked about being able to track down that machine that's overusing. You can go in, have an email sent to you that says this company is using this much data and you've allocated this much. And then it's going to give you a breakdown. These accounts within this company have been allocated this much data and are using this much. So that's how you can quickly find the overusers. And then from there, you can jump in and start to pull the logs for it to find out what they're overusing or how they're overusing. And of course, this anomaly detection. This is something that Infrascale has unique that's really, really helpful in today's world where we have ransomware, where people are out to take your people's money, your clients' money, by cheating them into installing software that will lock out their data. So what does this do? So what happens is anytime a backup file is changed, the CRC switch is flipped. Whoever, or if you know how that works, whenever a file is changed, Windows flips a CRC switch, and it's how we know to take a backup. But when you encrypt the file, it changes enough to flip that CRC switch as well. So if you rename it, change it, whatever, we know that there's something up. So the trick is we keep track of an unusual amount of changes. So if, for example, you're assuming a 5% daily change rate, and you set it as what, and all of a sudden you see a 10 to 15% daily change rate, you know something's wrong. You know that you're going to need to go ahead and take a look at that to make sure that nothing is encrypting unduly. So you contact your end users, and your end users say, actually, we just got a new client, and so there has been data growth. So maybe you want to still check in on it, but all is well, usually. If not, they say, oh, actually, nobody's done anything. It's been pretty dead around here the last couple of days. So now you know, okay, I've got to isolate this machine. I got to prevent this from spreading, and then I need to verify that it is ransomware. So you're going to go into the ransomware or to the file, try to open it up, and if you get that pop-up that says it's been locked, you at least prevented it from happening against all of your files instead of just 1 or 2 files. And to that end, Infrascale offers unlimited versioning. So whenever you're taking snapshots, you're keeping versions of that file, so you can always roll back to a point in time before you were nailed. And that's actually part of the service. So not only do we help you prevent yourself from being attacked by, or preventing the ransomware from taking over completely, but you can also enable yourself to do something about it by recovering from points in time. All right. So I just wanted to do a quick, mention the overview of everything we've covered. I didn't mention the licensing or account creation. That's actually something we can cover. And that's a good time to mention that we will train you. I think Seth briefly mentioned it. But with Infrascale, we're not going to nickel and dime you, right? You're buying a storage solution or a service, and we're going to provide that service end to end. So if you need support, it's covered. If you need, and I'm not talking like you need to pay for level 2 support and level 3 support. It's all level 1 support. You get it all from us as part of the service. Any updates that come out, including new features, new goodies, we're not going to charge you for the new stuff. As you grow, if you need more, you just buy more storage, and the accommodations will be met to ensure that your growth is easy. So you're not going to have to worry about, oh, what about this, what about that? With that being said, I just wanted to open it up for Q&A. We do have a question and answer tool over here on the left. Unlike before where I was typing it, I'll actually read them out and answer them one by one. But I wanted to give a second for Carla to step in to see if she wanted to mention anything else regarding the marketing aspect and how we can help you, go to market with this as we start to populate questions.
All right, sounds good. So thanks, guys, for the great presentation. So we wanted to dive into the Q&A now. Let me pull that up and see all the questions that are coming through. And so let's see.
Hey, Carla, before we jump into that, let me just get through one thing really quickly here.
All right.
So your call to action, for those of you that have seen the product and you think this is pretty interesting, you probably were on the webinar last week as well. I wanted to give you some next steps. We'd like you guys to join us in the Infrascale partner community. It's very easy to become an Infrascale partner. Just go to infrascale.com, go to the Partners tab, take a look for the Become a Partner Now link. Hit that link, and you've got a really simple form to fill in, and you'll be contacted by a Infrascale account manager. We covered some of this last week, but just a real quick recap, the reasons why you should look at this. Great margins on the product. Our partners are making somewhere between 30 and 100 points on the cloud backup solution and over 30 points on the disaster recovery. We covered this also. The NFR program, if you think that these products could help you protect your own business, we have an awesome program. It's incredibly discounted. For just $59 a month, you can get 4 terabyte appliance and 4 terabytes in the cloud for your own business. In addition, another terabyte of cloud backup, so you can protect your own company for $59 a month. As Aaron just mentioned, free training, not only on the products, but on sales and marketing as well. We do a ton of marketing support with partners. We've got a partner portal with a lot of resources for you guys, as well as an MDF program and co-marketing events. And finally, we do a ton of demand generation, and we pass out leads to our partners also. So there's some great reasons to consider joining the program and getting access to these products. And with that, let's go to the Q&A.
All right,
Thank
great.
you for that.
Thanks, Chris. All right, so let's look at some of the questions coming through here. Hans asks, what kind of SLA is Infrascale giving for availability of the management console?
All right, so I did answer this to Hans, but we wanted everyone a chance to see this. So the management console here should be 100%. I say should be. Every now and again we do an update, but that's a few minutes at a time when it actually happens. So the management console should always be up and available for you to be able to manage your solution. All right, I see another one here, Hans as well. He says, how does the wipe work? Can I be sure that the data is not recoverable? So Hans, this is a simple wipe. What it will do is it'll delete the data into the recycle bin type of thing. And again, culminating in a blue screen will help at the end, but this isn't a ones and zeros wipe. So this isn't going to be a government level wipe. So you still need a solution for that. This is, if you're looking for government or like any kind of espionage, company espionage, we can help by deleting it, and it'll prevent you from being in trouble on the average user. But if they're sending in pros, you're going to need a more heavy-duty wipe solution, and that's not provided by our product.
And then Hans, it looks like has another question. What kind? If I bring up a machine in the cloud, what is needed to actually use it for my environment? IP address, DNS, especially with domain controllers and database servers.
Sure, and I answered this one to Hans privately as well, but I want everyone to hear this as well. So basically, it's actually really simple. So when you take a snapshot, and that does go to the cloud, that data, and again, we're talking about the DR scenario here, that data actually captures pretty much everything about the machine, even down to the MAC address. So if you have something set up where once it replicates to the cloud, our team will get to you. They will ensure that the network configuration is taken care of on the back end. And then what happens is we cover all the cloud resources. So the compute, the storage, the networking, all that we will cover. All you need to do to remember to do is when you boot a machine, you just need to make sure that you repoint your DNS. Like, for example, if it's a public-facing web server that has a URL that it needs to redirect to a merchant system, you just need to make sure to redirect that. Or go into your switch or whatever you're using, router or firewall, and make sure that the NAT rules are up for the one-to-one type of machines. But to that end, there are a lot of ways to connect and get this going. So there's site-to-site VPN. There are VPN via agents. So if you need an MSI to deploy for like laptops, we have public IPs available. And of course, MPLS lines can be terminated into our data center. Of course, there's an additional cost for that, not because we want to charge you, but because the ISPs will charge you for that sort of solution. And I hope that answers your question.
And thanks, Aaron. And a couple more questions from Hans. I think that this one we haven't answered yet. Let's see, it's question 2, unlimited versioning. How about retention policies? Will that keep them unlimited? This could be a problem with large customers, question mark.
Yeah, so first and foremost, I need to define the unlimited versioning. So when I mean unlimited, I'm not just saying that we're going to keep everything and make you pay for it and twist my mustache like an evil man, right? Our unlimited versioning is unlimited because it's free to you. So for example, if you have a 1 megabyte Excel file and 5 years later it's grown to 20 megabytes, the only cost you pay for that file is the 20 megabytes. All the versions in between are covered by us. They're free. So you can roll back to as many points in time as you want without having to worry about what it's going to cost you. So for your larger clients, I say, make use of it, you know, enjoy it, get as many as you can. To that end, we do have the ability to delete versions should that be necessary. In fact, earlier when I showed you the cleanup account, some of you may have noticed the secondary tab that says delete versions. It allows you to delete the versions. So we do have the ability to control versions. We do have the ability to purge versions. But more importantly, you probably wouldn't want to or need to because we don't charge you for it. It's just something that you get as a bonus. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, a question from John now. In a disaster recovery scenario, how long does it take to spin up a large VM with access to the VM remotely? And if one of these VMs requires a public IP address, how soon are they available? And what is the max amount of IPs available for use?
Good question. So this is going to kind of re-answer or recover some of the stuff I just did with the, literally just answered because we didn't answer this one first. But anyway, it's all covered. It's all part of the solution, right? So whatever you need, we'll cover. Resources, public IPs, whatever is required. And to that end, we actually go through and help configure this. So when you pull the trigger and we set this up, and I talked earlier about setting up the network, to that end, we're talking about our guys sitting down with your guys and saying, all right, what does the architecture of your environment look like? So that we can mirror it in our cloud. And so that we can make sure that when something does go down, it is a matter of you right-click and go. So the reason Seth's demo looks so smooth is because we've taken the time to configure this already. And we'll do the same with you. That's the goal, to make sure that once deployment is done and everyone's signed off on it, it will work exactly like you just saw it today. You take new snapshots and you have a problem, you right-click and go, and then all you have to do is, if it's got, like, again, a public-facing server, just make sure that the domain's resolved, so you need to go to your registrar and point that. Other than that, everything else is going to be pre-set up for that purpose.
And then another question from Hans. A couple of comments, of course, in here too. Looks like Hans first said nice and thank you, and a couple of things like that. Another few comments to say awesome. So seeing lots of good comments come through, which is great. And then next question says, are you guys supporting IP4 and IP6?
So yeah, IP4 we have, we use right now, but we can do both. Not a big deal.
All right, any more questions coming through, guys? I don't see any new questions from there. Aaron, did I miss any questions in there?
Yeah, I see one from Hans that says, can I set the email notifications per customer or per machine if it's necessary? Absolutely, Hans. The agents themselves have the ability to email the individual reports, on top of being able to go in and go to the monitoring settings and requesting reports of specific machines. So you can do it based off of username, machine name, on the local side, on the client, on the target side, in our cloud. So there's a lot of ways you can pull reports on individual machines or individual accounts.
Great. All right, guys, and just a reminder again, as Chris mentioned, go to the Partner tab on our website and sign up to be a partner there. So don't forget about that. Another reminder here, we have recorded this session, so we are going to be sharing that with you. We'll be posting it in the partner. You'll also be able to infrascale.com/webinars. We will also be sharing a copy of these slides with you. And let's see, looks like a couple of other questions coming through now.
Right. So John Baker asked how granular is the Exchange restores. So not only do we do database level restores, I'm sure you heard that, but we also offer granular restores of both the mailbox level. So if you just need to pull John just your mailbox, or if you need an attachment on an email from last week that was deleted, you can drill through and pull out the attachment itself. So all the way down to the actual file itself. Yeah, no problem.
Great. And then it looks like James is asking if we can unmute the mics of the attendees. James, we prefer to moderate the Q&A, and then we do it live here, read the question and answer. But if that doesn't work for you, we will reach out to you after the presentation for any more specific questions that you might have. So James, keep an eye out for a call from us. John says, great, thanks. And then with that, guys, we are coming right up to the hour here. So again, remember to go to the Partner tab on the Infrascale website and sign up there to be a partner. Thank you guys so much for your time here. And thank you, Aaron, Seth, and Chris for the great presentation. Very informative, lots of wonderful information. So keep an eye out on your email for a copy of these slides and a copy of this replay video. And we very much look forward to working with you in the future. We look forward to partnership with you. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.